Hello everyone, welcome back to Analog IAS Current Affair Analysis for 4th May 2021. In this video, we'll be looking at this couple of issues. This editorial, Morals and the Vaccine Market, we need a closer reconciliation. This can be used as a case study in ethics. Let us also use this article to develop some perspective in handling questions with respect to our personality test as well. So, what is the question here? But before asking that question, let me brief you the scenario and the context of this article. If you take a look at India's second COVID wave, there is quite a contrast between how it panned out in India and other developing countries like our neighbors, Pakistan or Bangladesh, or certain other developing countries like Ethiopia, Philippines, Kenya. There is a difference. What is the comparison parameter we are looking at? How the a pandemic has actually flared up after vaccines came up in developing countries, and how developed countries are dealing with their population. There is a clear divide between delivery of vaccines and healthcare delivery in both these set of countries. There are many historical reasons for this. Let us examine them one by one to understand the many reasons for this divide in healthcare. Developed countries like UK, for example, has a national health scheme where healthcare delivery is completely free, even from grassroots levels. There is absence of such structure in developing countries like ours. So there is clearly uneven access to healthcare. That is the first reason for this widespread pandemic. Secondly, one of the most glaring inequity you can observe in vaccine distribution. Most of the vaccines manufactured till now are taken up by the developed countries. They formed pacts with vaccine makers, paid them up in advance, and got a majority of the vaccine share for themselves. Continuously, countries like US are inoculating the population before other vulnerable groups in other countries can actually have access to this vaccine. As a result, what is happening is the most vulnerable groups with comorbidities in other countries are facing a difficulty. How much is this inequity? Are we talking arbitrarily, or is there any data to back up the claim? So we have World Health Organization data. For example, as of January 18th of this year, if the developed countries had 39 million doses of vaccine, that is, we are talking about somewhere around 5 months ago, they had 39 million doses, whereas if you compare with the poorest country, there are just 25 doses. 25 only, not 25,000, not 25 million, just 25 doses. So this is the range of inequity that you can observe in both this set of countries. So this disparity is quite visible. There are countries like Israel, Seychelles, which have vaccinated almost more than 50% of the people. Even US, with such a big population, vaccinated 30% of its population. In India, in contrast, we just vaccinated 1.8% of the entire population. You can imagine the kind of spread and the reasons behind it now. If you're talking about the poorest of the poor countries, especially the sub-Saharan population or sub-Saharan Africa, almost no one got access to vaccines. So given that COVID vaccine is an essential good for entire global population, this grave inequality is a matter of ethical concern more than anything else. What is making matters worse is that developed countries are stocking the vaccines instead of giving it to the poorer countries, because they believe that in case of a need or as a precautionary buffer, they might have to stock up some vaccines. This is not very ethical on their part. A lot of activists who were fighting for social justice, they believed that, at least given the scenario that we are in presently, patents and other money making mechanisms would go away because we are facing a global crisis. But we still have a scenario where proprietary science and patent based market is still ruling the roost. For example, in May 2020, let us consider what happened. We have had platforms like CTAP and COVAX facility. CTAP is meant to share the information with respect to pandemic because we were in the early stages of the disease development. We didn't have enough medical history, so there is a need for collaboration. Similarly, we have had COVAX, which is a facility to allow access to different countries, especially the low income developing countries. But even in these cases, the early optimism is long gone because nobody started really contributing to these facilities of World Health Organization after vaccines became a reality. This stockpiling and patent regime came to the fore, and again this vaccines became a money making mechanism for a lot of pharma companies. It is not that pharma companies should be blamed here. What we have to realize is the need for a global level cooperation in issues like this. If governments don't come forward and contribute to pharma makers or pharmaceutical drug makers and vaccine makers, how will they recover their money? So they have certain incentive for developing patents. In fact, they are actually making it affordable in a lot of countries. Despite this fact, there is no global level cooperation. There is a need for a pandemic pool or a pandemic patent pool where all the countries contribute towards the research and development of these vaccines. Nothing of that sort happened. Therefore, learning from the experiences of this pandemic going forward, especially with respect to R&D sector in pharma, what we have to do is we have to create a framework wherein all the governments come together and contribute to the research. Secondly, what the governments across the world can do is all the pharmaceutical companies should get a fair share because there is no incentive for just giving out vaccines freely. What should also be avoided is actually demonizing the pharma industry because they spend significant amount. After all, they are patenting their products so as to get certain benefit out of it. Sometimes the money that they've spent on research would go wasted because there is no outcome out of that research. As in, it cannot be monetized immediately. It can contribute to the knowledge base, but it cannot be monetized immediately. So they all consider such kind of drawbacks whenever they are investing in research. What should be done right now is create this incentive structures. We have to reduce the profits of pharma companies so that generic drugs are available in a lot of low income countries like that of sub-Saharan Africa and developing countries like India. In countries like India, there is a significant chunk of population which cannot afford the kind of treatment, especially being given in COVID. Also, the insurance market is quite shallow in a country like India. Considering all these factors, we have to learn certain lessons, not just of economics but also of ethics. That is the key takeaway from this article. The second article for the day is taken from the Hindu and it is titled Constant Vigilance. This is with respect to the Khalistan movement. So recently, a few terrorists were arrested in Delhi and they were linked to the murder of a Surya Chakra awardee, Mr. Balwant Singh. So this has brought the long done and dusted movement of Khalistan back again into the picture, and now it is mysteriously being linked to the Punjab farmers protest. So this is not a rhetoric that is healthy for the society, and therefore the intelligence bureau and other intelligence agencies which are responsible for maintaining the law and order and security of our country should pay attention to this Khalistan movement again if it is reviving like it is anticipated, and also ensure that the conspiracy theories end without spreading in the social media. So let us take this opportunity to understand the GS1 aspect of post-independent India. What is Khalistani movement? What are its origins? and what are its implications for the unity and integrity of our country, especially the Punjab region. So, from the times of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, that is somewhere around 1700s, Punjab was constituted into 12 missals. So, at the time of independence in 1947, a lot of Punjabis were not really happy because their lands got separated between India and Pakistan. So, a lot of Sikhs chose to stay back in Pakistan but later migrated to India. But in the process, they've also had to leave out a lot of land in Pakistan as well. And similarly, Indian side also had sympathizers for a separate country of Punjabis. So that started the spirit of Khalistan movement, a separatist movement which acted as a threat to the Indian sovereignty. So in 1960s, NRIs from Canada and elsewhere, especially the sympathizers who wanted a separate country for Punjabis or Sikhs, suggested that they start a movement or encourage a movement in India towards the same objective. So this Khalistan movement began as an expatriate venture. So they gave financial and political support to the Sikh diaspora. Uh, they have mobilized the support from all the Sikhs across the world, and resources started pouring in from all the places into this organizations which were fueling the sentiments of Khalistan. In order to channelize these attempts, in 1966, the Indira Gandhi led government has accepted to reorganize the state, and Punjab was trifurcated, creating Punjab, Haryana, and transferring certain areas to Himachal Pradesh. So, exclusive Sikh areas had Punjab under them. In 1972 elections, Akali Dal, the Sikh political party, was defeated in the elections. To regain public appeal, the Akali Dal then put forward the Anandpur Sahib resolution. According to this resolution, they demanded radical devolution of power, almost to the sort of a autonomy to Punjab. This was not accepted. But the resolution document included both religious and political issues. It asked for recognizing Sikhism as a religion separate from Hinduism and transfer of Chandigarh and surrounding areas to Punjab directly. At this point of time, there was a powerful leader called Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, who was a major Khalistani supporter. Prior to this, he was with the Congress, and the Indira Gandhi government thought that they could use this person as an interlocutor, but he later turned the tables and joined the Khalistani movement. So, Bhindranwale, along with Akali Dal, started a organization called Dharam Yudh Morcha in 1982 in order to implement the Anandpur Sahib resolution. So, the Khalistani movement began as an expatriate venture, now started becoming even more violent, and this has eventually led to the formation of National Council of Khalistan. In 1983, the Akali Dal leader Haricharan Singh Longowal has invited Mr. Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale to occupy the residence in Amritsar's Golden Temple. In 1984, Indira Gandhi's government has carried out the Operation Blue Star to remove Bhindranwale from the Golden Temple. So this continued for 8 days from June 1st to June 8th. Indian government has succeeded in removing Bhindranwale from the Golden Temple, but it also hurt the religious sentiments of Sikhs. They did not like the Indian military occupying the sacred place of Harmandir Sahib. So in 1984, Indira Gandhi was assassinated by her two Sikh personal security guards, Satwant Singh and Beyant Singh. And this has triggered communal violence across Delhi in 1984, which is considered to be one of the largest pogroms in the post-independent India. So this furious violence has eventually subsided after the flame of anti-Sikh riots because of the involvement of the local Sikh population against these tendencies because of their own patriotic tendencies. So there was a lot of comparison after the Khalistani movement ended and the beginning of Jammu and Kashmir insurgency that Khalistani elements were linked to this ISI militants because they were historically known to fund these militants of Khalistan because of the bitterness that Pakistan had faced after the 1971 war and the result of Bangladesh formation. They were humiliated by the Indian government and they wanted to get back at us. So recent trends show that there has been a increase in another movement which has been fueling this Khalistani sentiments. So even if this is a conspiracy theory, the authors suggest that we have to ensure that such kind of secessionist tendencies shall not be evoked again. And in the present farmers context, just because Punjab farmers are protesting against the farm laws, these kind of theories are doing the circles in social media. So this is not a healthy environment, and we don't want to evoke such kind of emotions again, and we have to learn from our history. That is the gist of this article.